Welcome back to another episode of the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast, the place where poetry meets conversation. I'm your host, Terrence P. Elmore, and before we get into today's topic, make sure you hit that plus sign so you don't miss an episode. Also, please subscribe to my blog, thebrownsugarcafe.blog, and if you find any value in this episode or any other episodes, make sure you leave a heartfelt review. So with that being said, let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of Brown Sugar Cafe podcast. I hope that you all are doing well. I hope that everyone is having a good holiday. Hey man, we got these guests rolling. Today I have another special guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
What's going on? My name is Preach Jacobs. I am a hip hop artist, a journalist in Columbia, South Carolina, and owner of an art gallery called Soul House at 1223 Lincoln Street, and a 2021 ambassador to the city of Columbia, man. Thank you all for having me.
Man, great to get you on here finally, man. Our schedules finally lined up. I really appreciate you taking out the time. Speaking of your gallery, you just had a wine tasting event. How did that go?
Um, it was incredible, man. It was really dope because I DJ at a place called Lula Drake. For the people that don't know, it's in Columbia. It's on Main Street, and they just won a James Beard Award this year, and it's a really really great experience with them because I get to play jazz records every Tuesday night, which is really funny because it kind of happened by accident.
Yeah.
Where as a DJ, man, I don't want to be in places where kids are anymore. Like, like it's just nothing makes me feel like the older guy in the room than when someone that's like 22 is asking me for an artist and I have no idea who they are. So this is like a kind
Yeah.
of a natural transition where I was just at Lula Drake one day and hanging around talking to the owner, and they're playing a bunch of jazz over the top. And I'm like, yo, I have an original Dave Brubeck for this. I have an original Miles Davis and blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, would you like to play here? And I'm like, this makes sense that if I DJ in an art gallery, sorry, if I DJ at a wine bar, maybe those people will buy art. And so I'm there every Tuesday and I love it. It's my favorite gig. I get to play jazz records. It's real chill. And I love it because I don't know anything about wine. I'm a bourbon dude. So this kind of
Yeah.
puts me in a position where I can learn more. And so when I had this idea for the wine tasting, they just were really great to partner up. So the way we did it was Lula Drake provided the charcuterie, they did the wine. There's a black-owned Prosecco company out of Charleston called Don Lucci that's there.
Yeah.
There's this black artist out of Beaufort named Atiba Smith that makes amazing art pieces with driftwood. So we had him as a featured guest. I had a live band, I performed, and it was really an incredible event and a really um, amazing black event because it was like we was playing black music, man. It's like I'm a hip hop artist, so I'm performing and we're playing like Dilla joints and stuff like that. And so it was a bear hug that I needed from the community. So it was a really great event, man. So I'm still kind of basking a little bit, but great way to end the year.
Yeah, for real, man. I hate I missed it, man. Something came up, and I remember when you first posted, I put it on my calendar, but I couldn't make it, man. I saw in your pictures it said part one, so will there be a part two soon?
There's something that we working on, man. So
Okay.
so yeah, I got some stuff that I'm doing. So the goal that I would love to have is to maybe once a month is too much, but once every other month and have different sponsors. And so it makes me be proactive about wanting to find, black owned wineries, black owned, Prosecco companies, just black owned people to kind of collaborate with. And bringing some artists in. So visual artists, musical artists. So it's something that I think is really dope. And plus the idea of trying to make the art gallery be inviting uh, to young black folks because I'm approaching an art gallery from a non-conventional status, right? Where
Yeah.
when I was growing up, it was an intimidating space, right? So like the art gallery is like going to the gym as a fat man, right? It's like you go in there, you like I don't know where to start. I have
Yeah.
no clue. People are gonna look at me like I'm crazy, and there was something called Vista Lights that they do every November, where it's just like this big thing where everybody in the Vista area come out. And the amount of times when we were open, where so many young black kids and younger black folks were just looking through the window, even with the door open. And I'm like, come on in, come on in. It was such a big thing to me because it felt like they didn't think that they should be a part of this, right? So I
Yeah.
think that the more important thing that I want to do with this space is to encourage young collectors and encourage young people to get involved with art. You know what I mean? So not to have this hoity-toity idea that, if you don't know about this artist and something's wrong with you, like, no, like I want to be in a situation where we encourage younger people and people of color to invest in art because I think it's important.
Man, that's major. That's very important. Just as you were saying, I was just thinking about when I was younger, just going to places where there were art galleries and not really feeling like, and I guess maybe it's from things I've seen on TV where you have people going into art spaces and they're just sitting there staring at a painting or something, and then they just see all these different things, and then just getting older and being exposed to more black artists and different things like that it's more inviting. And if you see people doing things like this, especially yourself having an art gallery, that's representation and that's major. That's something that we don't normally see anywhere.
Yeah. You know what it is? It's that we were told so long that all the things that make us who we are was lowbrow and not important. Like,
Mm.
so think about, I tell people more than anything else, hip hop culture has the biggest impact on me more than anything else. So when I'm growing up, imagine being told that this culture that means so much to you is something that's considered a fad or something that's considered silly, something that's considered stupid. And this isn't just coming from white folks, like black folks
Right.
are doing that, right? And now you have um, Harvard University is having hip hop fellowships now, and people are having classes on it now. And I love telling this story that Ninth Wonder told me, where Ninth Wonder had a Harvard fellowship when they wanted to get
Mhm.
into being like, hey, hip hop is really important, yada yada yada. So Ninth tells me this, and I think this is at Harvard, or this is the Harvard Museum on the campus or somewhere around there, where he said that the curator was taking him through the museum, and they took him into this room, and they opened up this big old vault, twist it open it up like this, just like, I say steam, but this stuff comes up, and she pulls out a thick piece of glass, and it's these like handwritten pieces of paper with scribble on it, and she said, these are the rough drafts of Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address when he's trying to figure it out. And Nike was like, wow, okay. And she puts it down. And right next to it, another thick piece of glass she pulls up. It is the first hip hop flyer on Cedric and Cedar Ave. And it's in there right beside the Gettysburg Address. And she's like, to us, this flyer is just as important as this, right?
Wow.
And so when you have a leader of a university worldwide that's saying this type of stuff about this culture, you start to be like, yo, my culture is important. I say the same thing about black art. It's that all the stuff that I love, all the stuff that I embrace, you know, think about how the conversation with comic books have changed over the past 20
Mhm.
years. You know what I'm saying? So that's the part of it where I'm like, yo, I don't want people to tell me that my culture, the things that I love is unimportant, right? Like, we growing up in school, they're talking to you all about, a bunch of artists that don't look like a bunch of unmelanated artists. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like, so changing that narrative and being deliberate about that is just something that's really important to me.
Yeah. Just thinking about that and the Cosby Show, right? Just
Yeah.
seeing that artwork that was on the
Mhm,
wall
mhm,
was major. It was like that, and whatever. That just was an important part of our culture growing up. Like we got to see things, especially jazz artists and being
mhm,
exposed to different type of jazz music with that show. And I just started thinking about like the artwork that was presented on there in a different world and stuff like that. And it's refreshing, especially for you to have a space like this in a place where it's not commonly melanated, but it's like it's exposing everybody to it. And then when we were growing up, we had to see like TV shows and movies and things that had that particular type of artwork in there. You know what I'm saying? It was basically there where we saw this, but to see like an art gallery like yours where it is, it's exposing everybody to it, not just the people around it, but like you said, young black kids are able to see like, wow, this is an art gallery. This is pretty dope. And they may have that dream to actually be an artist. Cause I know that was one of the things that was kind of frowned upon growing up. Like you want to draw, you want to paint or whatever. and it wasn't seemed as a thing. It was like, you got to go to college, you got to go do this. But to see a space like yours and to see representation like the art that's in there, that's really important to the culture. Like kids, I think nowadays, like they just want to express themselves, and sometimes we don't give them the opportunity to. And so with things like art, hip hop, and a number of things, they don't really get a chance to. So I think personally, some of these kids, they've expressed themselves in other ways because they're not allowed to express themselves artistically.
Yeah. I mean, and plus the thing that ends up happening with us when we were growing up is that the reason why, I got country black parents. So the reason why they weren't supportive of being an artist, it wasn't that they had anything against it theoretically, but it was like in their minds, they're like, I don't know nobody that can make a living doing art full time.
Yeah.
Right. And so in their protective way, I remember when, every light skinned black man stereotype. When I was growing up, I wanted dreads. When I was like in my late teens, I was wearing dashikis. I was listening to Dead Prez, all this type of stuff. And I remember my father was so nervous with me getting locks because he couldn't articulate it, but he was just vehemently against it. Because in his mind, he's just like, this boy's going to be a target if he's
Mm,
out here driving and getting pulled over, right? And so there's this approach that our parents' generation, they just didn't know what else to say or how to do it. And also the thing about art that has happened, and I think that I see our generation doing the thing to younger people now, is that our parents are really frustrated with us because they didn't understand the music we was listening to. But
yeah.
young people aren't supposed to be doing that. I mean, think about this. Think about this. I always joke about this as I have my Wu-Tang picture signed behind me. Imagine the generation of hip hop from rappers delight listening to Wu-Tang for the first time. Could you
Yeah.
imagine that
You got a
kickback?
point. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
pushback, dudes just like, huh, 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 huh. And all of a sudden, them like Shaolin, Wu said, yeah, y'all Negroes ain't Chinese. So imagine just just that cultural shift and what kind of could you imagine Kumo D listening to Cream
Yeah.
for the first time? Like so 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 even within the culture, when there's young 18, 19 year olds making music or listening to music, as a 41-year-old, I'm not supposed to like that. I'm supposed to
Yeah.
give them, I'm supposed to be an OG and give them guidance so they don't have the pitfalls that we had. But that's the thing. It's like we're not supposed to understand it. Like what we should be doing, and I always tell people this, the old Robin Harris joke, like, oh look, making kids making music. Because the more you making the music, the less you breaking in my house, stealing
Yeah.
stuff. So I encourage y'all, get a studio, get a paintbrush, anything creative to do that keeps y'all out of the streets, go for it. I'm all for it.
Man, you really helped me just now, man. I never thought about it like that. And I guess it's because the era we grew up in, like we were
Mhm,
exposed to different type of rap and we kind of just grew with it, you know? Like you have like this, say for instance, just I don't know, Def Jam. How
mhm,
over the years it progressed and stuff, and then you have like artists like Wu Tang, and then I
mhm,
could think about when Outkast first jumped on the scene. It was really exciting for me to see some representation from the South because to me it's like they reminded me of myself. You know, we were used to growing up listening to up north rap and stuff, and I think during that era when Outkast came out, it was finally like some people that looked and kind of sounded like us. Even with like Cash Money when they first came out and No
mhm.
Limit and things like that. And then what you said, it just made me think about how like the music changed. Like even that era, like when Crunk was really hot and how
Yeah.
that was
Well,
different.
here's a couple of thoughts I have on that. Like number one, um, when I think of Outkast, the one thing that I think when people conflate what happened when Andre's at the Source Awards and he's decided the South got something to
Oh
say.
yeah.
That was the same Source Awards when Suge Knight was saying what he said. So
Yeah.
imagine that place was just full of ruckus that night, right? So you got New York going against a Death Row. You got Outkast. Here's the thing that kills me about the Andre thing. When Andre is just like, man, I got demo tape. Nobody want to hear this. The South got something to say. He got booed. They booed Outkast,
Yeah.
right? Like when you think about that in that context, Andre 3000, one of the greatest MCs of all time. Outkast, to me, the greatest hip hop of all time. Like, booed, right? And that's us doing it. That's hip hop doing that. Now,
Yeah.
one of the things that I do think that happened, and this is a big deal for me, seeing groups like Outkast. I always call this out because I think this is great. Like LaFace Records, when you got L.A. Reid and Babyface, for those two guys that were in the industry over the years, where the industry always felt like it was either New York or LA, for those two black men to say, yo, we're going to start a label and just focus on Atlanta artists. So Outkast is Atlanta, Goody Mob Atlanta, TLC Atlanta, Tony Braxton Atlanta. That whole label, they made stars out of Atlanta-based artists. And I think that if they weren't doing what they're doing, we wouldn't have an Outkast. I don't see a major New York label
Oh no.
investing in an
Yeah.
Outkast, right? And so when we get to the crunk era, what I really think happened, you see this shift, and this is kind of what I call like the death of Wu Tang in a way, where you got um the RZA decides to become Bible Digital, and
Yeah.
here's what happened: all those Wu Tang records, you know, 36 Chambers, Cuban Links, Liquid Swords. I come from sample heavy hip hop. And the reason why they got away with it early on is because nobody thought these records were going to do anything. Right. So when they started blowing up, you had artists retroactively going in and suing
Hmm.
all these producers. So the RZA was just like, man, bleep that. I ain't sampling no more. Give me a keyboard. And he didn't know what he was doing. And
No.
all the music that sounded terrible.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden the South that was 808 driven and guys weren't using samples like that. All of a sudden labels are basically like, yo, Manny Fresh ain't sampling. Yo, Lil Jon ain't sampling. Organized Noise really ain't sampling. So that all of a sudden just opened the door for labels to really, really be like, yo, like it's cheaper to get these Southern acts. We ain't gonna get no lawsuits with them doing this stuff and
Yeah.
everything. I think that was like a big, big shift in that stuff as well. But yeah, but like the fact that Outkast got booed was insane to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane to me. And they came out at a time because there was Southern hip hop, but it was Scarface to me when I was growing up. Um,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Ghetto
yeah,
boys.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Scarface, 8 Ball, MJG, but it didn't hit the way Outkast did. And I remember this, and I wrote about this before. I wrote a column in the Free Times before about this. About I had low city self esteem or low state self esteem, right? Because we were treated like dumb country bumpkins and all this type of stuff. So I used to pretend like I wasn't from South Carolina, right? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
to find a group that was like embracing a thick Southern accent and being able to like, yo, this is cool. This is where we're from. That was like one of the first times where I just started being like, yo, I am from here and let me have some pride in it. You know what I mean? So finding yourself in the mix of the culture was a big deal for me too. And when we're talking about the variety of hip hop music we got to listen to, because nobody cared about it, it was ours, right? So
Yeah.
I grew up listening to Public Enemy, NWA, Beastie Boys, Native Tongues. Everybody sounds different. I had this diet of all these different types of hip hop music, and I was a fan of all of it. And then as soon as uh, things shifted with radio, where all right, I'm gonna get kind of in the weeds a little bit. So back in the day, and this is a personal experience that I had. So I was doing radio interning when I was like 15, 16 years old at a station here because my voice sounded like this since I was 10. And I'm interning and I'm answering the phones in the studio. And we had a request line radio show.
I remember those days. Yeah.
Well, check this out. Check this out. So this is like early 2000s. So when somebody would call on the request line, like, hey, I want this song, I would grab a piece of paper, try to get a pen. There's one day, the host of the show grabs my hand and stops me from writing down the song. When I get off the phone, he says to me, he says, hey, Preach, request radio doesn't exist anymore. He's like, we have a playlist of songs that we have to play. He's like, now if somebody calls and asks for a song that we have on this playlist, then you write their name down and we'll act like we played it for them, right? But what ended up happening with the shift in radio, DJs weren't able to break records anymore. So you could be a hip hop artist, send a record to a DJ, and a DJ can be like, all right, we're gonna test this record out, see what the public thinks about it. And then when people start calling in and love the song, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this record is in rotation, right?
Yeah.
When things shifted and the labels took over the radio, the labels like, nah, you have to play this. And DJs didn't have the freedom to play things to get broken organically. So that was over 20 years ago. And the
Yeah.
public didn't know that because the public still thought they had a request line. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You say, hey, Tasha, shout out to you for this song. Like, we didn't play it because of Tasha. It was on the list anyway. And so those things kind of really, really shifted with how, we receive the music, But the hip hop I listened to wasn't on the radio anyway. So I didn't have a problem with that. You know what I mean? But yeah, so that's a little inside baseball right
Yeah.
there.
Man, I had a DJ friend. I mean, well, I guess I'm not gonna name him, but he told me about that. And what really blew my mind was because he used to do probably the same radio station, but he was like he needed to take his mix and drop it off. And I'm like, what do you mean drop it off? And he's like, yeah, that mix that plays, I've already recorded that. I'm like, "Are you
Mhm.
serious?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "I really thought you was in the studio and with people, requesting."
Yeah,
Blew
yeah,
my mind.
yeah, man. And and like once upon a time, being on radio was the biggest thing ever,
Yeah,
right? And I think that with the shift that ended up happening with music, now I feel like when you look at crews like um the Buffalo Boys, West Side Gun, and all of them, they're making really, really, really a niche style of hip hop that we grew up on, and that's a sound where none of them care about radio play, right? Nobody cares about a pop hit. Nobody cares about any of the
yeah,
stuff, and they're able to say we can make a sustaining career making the type of records we want to make, right? So there was a shift. There was a time where people just wanted to be on radio, and then it became a time where people just like, you know what, being on radio is not the cool thing. And now you see so many artists that terrestrial radio doesn't exist anymore. It's streaming and it's playlist now. You know what I mean? So seeing how the music and the industry has shifted, at the end of the day, I just tell people make the music you want to make, man, and
yeah,
find the people that rock with you. You know what I mean? So yeah.
yeah. Wow, man, you bringing back some memories, man. Man, yeah, man. That whole shift is just, man, that is crazy. Like you really got my mind going thinking about like that whole shift with the radio and just how I mean, even up here with the shift of the radio stations, how that whole thing went down, it was just all of that stuff was happening like around the same time. Wow.
Yeah. And it's, I'm interested in how people consume music now. So it's
Yeah.
like when I finished the wine tasting event, I have an album on record. I have an album called Francis, named after my grandmother, and I have it on vinyl. And and it was really dope because when the show was done, all these people bought the record. I signed the records, and to me, that's still the best way to consume music. Is a very, very analog experience. You touch a product, you feel the product, you get it from somebody. But what ends up happening, the public thinks that they're being supportive. So I'm not insulting the public with this, but like when people are like, oh, I'm supporting your record, I'm streaming it. We get nothing from streams. Like we get like 0.000 of a penny per
Yeah.
stream, right? And so when you have the audience thinking they're supporting local artists by streaming, it doesn't help that way. So I usually tell the public out there, you really, really, really want to support um, local musicians or artists that you like, buy the physical product or buy some of their merch, right? So if you feel like streaming their music, if they got a dope T-shirt on their website, if they have a hat or whatever, like buy the merch because that's how the game is kind of shifted because people don't buy physical product. like as physical CDs or
Yeah.
records like that anymore, unless you're actually a collector. So a lot of times, if you really want to support an artist, buy something that goes directly into their pocket because the streaming numbers is basically like a digital business card. Like I make no
Okay.
money. I make no money off of streams at all. You know what I mean? Like you just kind of
Yeah.
just ignore it. You know what I mean? Like I'll ignore my streams, and then at the end of a year and a half, I'm like, oh snap, I forgot to look at my stream, the money I make off my stream, and you got like I don't know, $180. You know what I'm saying? After getting all these
Wow.
like, thousands upon thousands upon
Yeah.
thousands of streams, right? So it's like, all right, well, all right,
Man,
but
I didn't know it was that bad. So how
it's like,
being an artist as long as you've been, how do you navigate other than, of course, what you just said through, early on in the game? I mean, man, I'm just thinking about how music was back in the day, man. You could hustle your CDs when you saw somebody out of the trunk or your tape, depending on how long you was doing music, and it was just easy. And then once they got rid of CD players and started with, MP3 and all of that, that hustle was gone. Like you still had some people kind of holding on to it. But how from that era to now, like how do you navigate with that? And where do you see, being the artist coming from an artist standpoint, like music going in the future?
um, I think we already see it. I think the one thing, if we're talking about physical media, I think vinyl is the best way to go, right? Like vinyl, vinyl does a few things though, and I come from the old era of hip hop where you have your music on record. It was a big deal, right? So in saying that, the 90s, you had the most profitable era of music because CDs was the cheapest format to make, to print up, right? So when you got CDs in the era that's like, replacing cassette tapes cost a lot more than CDs. So CDs were dirt cheap, right? So you started to see how technology kind of changed the music. So, for an example, I have this theory, none of this is proven, but when you look at old Motown albums and stuff like that in the 70s, they were really great from beginning to the end. My theory was in an era of 8 tracks, you can't rewind or fast forward an 8 track. Once you play it, you got to play it all the way through. So if
Yeah.
I run a record label, I need to make sure that everything is dope, because if I have an audience that gets angry that they can't fast forward or rewind a song, right? That's just not a good business model. So the
Yeah.
technology forced the music to sound a certain way, right? Um, when you ended up getting CDs, this is where you started seeing CDs open up or albums open up with 20 tracks full of skits or whatever, because a CD can hold 80 minutes of information. So that's when you started seeing labels trying to push this idea of like, this album has all these songs on it, yada yada yada. You know what I mean? Like artists like Redman that can have skits throughout the whole course of the
Yeah.
album. It was like a great platform for him to kind of really open up. But ultimately, vinyl has always been, for purists, the gold standard. It just sounds better. And but the issue with it is not cost friendly,
Mhm.
right? So I mean, 12 inches was a thing where if a DJ is playing a record, they're playing a record. But primarily, and even now, people want to buy records. People that want to like produce records, it just costs a lot of money. And the problem with getting vinyl done is that there's a small number of places in the country that press vinyl up. So it's not like independent artists go to one place and then big artists go somewhere else. Like, nah, we all use the same people. To the point where, I was working at a record store, I was working at Papa Jazz. There was a point where when Adele's album wanted to come, when Adele wanted to put an album out, everybody's records got pushed back because Adele's orders was priority. So if you was like, hey, I'm supposed to be pressing this album up, these pressing plants is like, yo, you're gonna have to wait 58
Wow.
weeks, right? You're gonna have to wait an entire year to get your stuff back because Adele is priority, right? But there is not a format that generates the most money in return than vinyl. And And one of the things that again, this is a theory, none of this has been proven. Working in the record store, I worked there during COVID. And there were really three industries that really technically four industries that blew up during COVID. You got like the hand sanitizer industry blew up, but that's kind
Yeah.
of neither here or there. But you had the frozen pizza industry blew up, where people just like staying home eating carbs. You had the art industry blew up because people in their house all day, they're like, you know what, I might as well put something on my walls. And then vinyl sales like sparked. And my theory for that is vinyl is the only format where you have to congregate to play it. Like
Mm.
it's the only format. You can't listen to it on the train, you can't listen to it in your
Yeah.
car, you can't go for a jog. So if someone's playing a record, they're intentionally saying, I'm here right now. Right? It's intentionally saying, hey, gather around. Right. And
Yeah.
so there was something that was kind of um a renaissance of it, of people doubling back and started buying vinyl again. And there's this new appreciation for it, right? And the same things happen with cassette tapes. So cassette tapes, they're a lot cheaper to do. Like people, I printed up some cassette tapes of my album for
Yeah. I
fun,
remember that. Yeah.
sold out them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And kind of like you saying about your CD player, I was joking. I don't have a tape player. This company literally could have sent me blank tapes, and I would not know, right? So, you
Yeah.
know, so, but what I did realize is that the audience wants a connection. They want something physical in their hands. And you can say to them, hey man, you can stream this, but here's also a record that's signed that you can put on a, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
so that's important to me too. So when you ask where I think the music is going, I think streaming is always going to be there until something else kind of shifts the industry. But I do think um, investing in new ways for artists to generate money, to generate income, be non-traditional, that's going to be the way to do it, because no one cares about radio. Like now, I'll be honest with you, podcasts have become the new music, right? Where if
Yeah.
you look at what happened with Spotify, when there was this huge outcry, the first big contract Spotify did was with Joe Rogan, and that was like $100 million contract some years ago. He probably makes a lot more now. But
Yeah.
the conversation with Spotify was this: they were just like, "Yo, how is Spotify a platform that started with music? Why y'all giving all this money to the potter?" And their theory is pods are a way to keep people engaged longer. So if you're streaming an album or streaming a song that's 3 minutes, that's one thing. But if you listen to a podcast, it's an hour, 2 hours. Like these platforms, like, oh, the longer I got you on here, the more I can sell ads to you, the more I can do this, the more I can do that. So I say the new way for artists to kind of find their niche into a groove, you know, everybody's starting podcasts now. And I don't say that as a as a slur, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I think that anything that gives people opportunities to express themselves and have control of their narrative, I'm always supportive of that. But that's the way it's like all of a sudden, like he kind of annoys me. But Math Hoffa, who does these interviews in his barbershop, before every video, but before every interview, he playing one of his songs, right?
Yeah.
Right? You know what I'm saying? He like, you gonna hear this record
Right.
before you see me this guy, right? But I can't knock the hustle. So like I see that happening with the future of artists and how they're making music, and just trying to, the same way you had the ringtone era and people shifted their music to make that, like I don't know what the next era is going to be, but
Yeah.
I would say if you're going to be an artist, you can't be rigid. You can't be like, I'm never doing this. You gotta
Yeah.
learn to be like, all right, let me find my own lane. Let me see how technology moves and what I need to do if I want to survive in this. Or you can be an old man like me and just be like, yo, I want to make the music I want to make. And, I press up 300 pieces of vinyl. I sell them, do some shows here and there, feel good about it. I'm not trying to sell a million records because I'm not, I think Alchemist said this. He says, I'm not Budweiser. He said, I'm a microbrewery. You know what I mean? Like I have a small batch,
Yeah.
a specialty batch. Find my people that I rock with. I go to them and I'm good. So I think that's probably a lesson that artists need to look into as well.
Man, I'm still tripping about it because I remember when Francis dropped, I thought I was doing something, streaming it, and putting it on my reels. I'm like, yeah, yeah,
Appreciate it. Listen. I appreciate it. I'm not saying it's
yeah.
worthless. You know, I'm
I
not saying
know,
it's
but
worthless. It's just you have to train the public. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Because they don't know
yeah,
better. So to
no,
think the public knows, you know what I mean? Like they just don't know. Um,
yeah,
but and that's not just an independent artist thing. It's that listen, man, this doggone lawsuit that Drake got with all the big labels and stuff like that, like
yeah,
he's complaining because he knows because he used these tactics to help
yep,
him in
exactly.
return, right? So so nobody is making money off of streaming except like the big ones, right? Drake, Taylor Swift, maybe Beyonce,
Beyonce, yeah,
right? Like no one is making money off of streaming. Nobody is streaming to the point where they're basically like, oh, that's all I need to do, right? Check it out. Snoop talked about this. Snoop was like, I can't remember the numbers, but Snoop was saying something that one of his songs or albums streamed like 1 billion times, and it was like I don't know, $5,000, 10,000. It was something weird
yeah,
like that. I can't remember the
yeah,
exact numbers. I can't remember the exact numbers, but he was talking about like dog, like it was nothing. It was absolutely nothing compared to you know what I mean. So yeah.
wow,
So I think that something with that industry is going to have to shift soon. I don't know what'll happen or how it needs to happen, but I think that's going to be a shift in that as well. But
yeah, yeah.
until then, you got to be creative, man.
Yeah. Now you talked about podcasting being a way. Does that mean we'll see some more Negro Lead podcast episodes coming soon?
So there's some stuff that I'm working on right now. So
Okay.
it was one of those things where I was working for this media company, um, and the media company was really kind of cool because it was like the focus on it was South Carolina politically based, and they had me doing some stuff. But unfortunately, when we're talking about a Democrat political heavy podcast, you're kind of like, all right, there's an expiration date after the election. What's going to happen
Yeah.
with our contract, right? So I fell back on doing a lot of that stuff because I was like, I want the main thing to be the main thing. If I'm doing, I don't want to have competing podcasts with the company I'm dealing with. But what I'm more interested in is figuring out a way to have a platform to have really, really dope conversations that I want to have. So, for an example, having this art gallery, I want to have something where I'm interviewing artists in the art gallery and figuring out a way to kind of have those type of
Yeah.
conversations that I'm not seeing and figuring out a way to have the partnerships. Cause like when we're talking about with just the visuals, I don't want to just have my vlogging camera. I want to be able to be like, all right, how do we get a budget? How do we get the grants? How do we get the people to really, really shoot these stories the way they need to be shot?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, Negro League is definitely something that's in the peripheral that I'm trying to work out. Um, the unfortunate thing, man, is like the problem that I have is that I don't have an idea that I don't want to execute, and
Yeah.
sometimes I gotta stop and figure out one at a time. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
Negro League is coming back. It's coming
Okay.
back.
Yeah, when you talked about that just now about your vision for the art gallery, I just remembered, like I said, we in the pre-show, you have a lot of dope stuff going on at one time. When you had that event at the Trusses Theater where you
Oh
interviewed
yeah,
Benny
Black
Starr,
AF.
yeah,
Yeah,
that was such a dope experience, and it was during COVID. We was in there with the masks on, so couldn't come up to you afterward and tell you all how I really enjoyed it. But that was such a dope experience. I could
but
really
yeah, the
see that in the
conversation
art gallery.
series. Which
Yeah,
which one did you go to?
the
Because
one
I
with
did.
Benny Starr.
Okay, yeah. So, and those are ideas that I want to kind of literally what you're talking about. That what I want to do with the gallery is that I wanted to have a platform where I have these conversations with a woman of color and a man of color about what they're doing. And so we did a couple of them. I think I had Benny Starr, and then I had Falami, who's the owner of
Yeah,
Pizza Soul Vegan Restaurant. And I think another one I had Tamika Isaac Devine when she announced she was running for mayor. And then I had Sanford Green. And it was just something where the pandemic just became too much to try to, even with social distancing. And to me, I'm like, if the only programming I think would make sense would be something where I could put somebody on one side of the stage and the other side of the stage and we just have a talk. Like that was just that was just me trying to figure it out because I knew what was going on with creatives was
Yeah.
that they were just stuck in the house, not being able to do anything. You know what I mean? And as a DJ, being stuck in a house and you can't go out and rock a party or do this or do that or your livelihood, you're trying to find different ways to be creative while being at home. So that idea is something that I want to do again, but that'd be something I would love to do in the art gallery, right? Where I have salon talks and just have conversations. I think one thing I would say advice to artists is the simpler the idea, the better.
Mm.
So so to be able to be like, all right, well, let me just have programming where I just have a conversation with a dope artist. We got two microphones in the audience, right? So when my album Francis came out, I didn't want a traditional listening party. I didn't want to go to New Brooklyn Tavern or nothing like that. I wanted to have a really cool experience. So we did it at the Nickelodeon. I was able to show some of my music videos, and my listening party was me having a conversation with my therapist in front of 100 people, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So it was a conversation where the album's named after my grandmother, and I kind of touch on a lot of things that she went through as far as like growing up in the Jim Crow South. Uh, I tell this story all the time where she told me when she was a little girl, her great grandmother used to live with her. Her great grandmother was an enslaved woman, and so the idea that my grandmother interacted with an enslaved person and I interacted
Yeah.
with my grandmother, there's 1 degree of separation, right?
Yeah.
So I I realized, you know, through my experiences after my grandmother had passed, I was like, oh, she has all these stories that nobody knows about. So what my job needs to be as an artist is to be able to talk about these stories for my people and the people that didn't have an opportunity to say it. So I say that the art that I do got to be a love letter to the ancestors, right? Like, so that album was kind of a way where it's like, yo, she couldn't articulate these things that she went through. Let me use this as a platform to talk about these things, right? And so to have like my therapist with me and we kind of have these kind of black man, we having this
Yeah.
conversation. Like it was a very, very intimate, vulnerable conversation, which to me, if I'm supporting an artist, that's what I want to hear from them now.
That's
I don't
so
want to
true.
hear about braggadociousness. I don't want to hear like Tyler the Creator said this, and I thought this was really, really brilliant. He was basically saying how the industry is always claiming that record sales are low. People ain't buying records no more. But Tyler the Creator was just like, well, the reason people ain't buying records no more is because nobody talks to artists about their art. He's just like, what ends up happening is that you have rappers on a show buying sneakers, or they're eating hot wings, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Or what I hate more than anything are these potters that try to do the whole deadpan thing. Like remember that white
Mm.
girl? I don't remember her name, but that white girl infiltrated hip hop, right?
Yeah. I know you're talking about. Yeah.
Had Drake on a pod, have one of the Migos on a pod, and her whole thing is lowbrowing hip hop, like she's above it, and like you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And throughout that course of the conversation, there's no real talk about how did you write this album? Where these beats come from? Where did sample come from? What motivated you? So you have a bunch of people putting work out where we had no emotional attachment to the records at all,
Yeah.
right? So you know what happened when I cried in front of 100 people talking about my album? They all lined up and bought a record. Just like this past Friday with the wine tasting. When I sat and talked to these people about these records, what happened after I was done? They lined up to buy the record. So finding ways for your public to connect with your art is the most important thing. And people just think that they can just make the music and that's it. People don't digest music the same way anymore. You put an
No.
album out, it's on rotation maybe a week, maybe two, and then they're on to the next thing. Which is also the trouble with streaming is that it's easy to get lost in the sauce with it. So
Yeah.
so you have to connect with the audience. If you don't connect with the audience, you ain't really doing nothing.
That's a really good point, man. Like we lost those platforms. I remember watching Rap City, Rap City the Basement. MTV Raps, where we actually got to see, even with music videos, when
Mm-hmm.
that was popular, we got to see, the ones that weren't over exaggerated and stuff, but we got to see like a look into the artist and a look
Mm-hmm.
into, and we were interested, even with like CDs and cassettes, opening it up, reading, the information inside, aside from like who produced the beats and stuff, but just like, they have a little spot in there talking about, and then magazines, Source Magazine, Word Up Magazine, stuff like that we grew up on. Like you got to
Listen,
actually see, and we don't have
what,
that anymore.
well, the thing was that hip hop policed hip hop, right? Here's a real thing that happened with the source and platforms like that. I was reading the source for a mic review, and I know the mic reviews that records got. Cuban Links got 4.5.
Yeah.
Uh, 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 like 3 of the Tribes album got 5, and Stankonia, not Stankonia, Equipment I got 5. Like these are moments in my mind when I see a 5 mic rating, 4.5 mic rating. The Roots LF Half Life 4.5 mics, like those things stuck to my mind.
Yep.
The other part about it was more than just hip hop policing itself, is that here was a big thing that happened. If I'm writing for the source, or even music in general, if I'm writing for a music magazine reviewing an album, an artist got the record to me before it was open to the public, and I got to sit with it. Right? I got this tape in the mail, I got the CD in the mail, and I got to listen to it. I got to wake up to it. I got to come back to it, and then I can write an in-depth review about how I felt. And so the public, when they read these thoughtful reviews on these records that people got to sit with, there was an anticipation, and when it was released, we kind of got into it.
Hmm.
Now what happens is the reviewer listens to the music at the same time the public listens to the music. It
Yep.
just drops, and everybody has access at the same time. So rarely do you have a situation where music journalists are able to really, really, really sit and be with the records, right? Um, and again, the source being able to police hip hop, and we're like, yo, we want to do this. We're writing about this. Listen, man, I saw this the other day. Forbes, Forbes
I already know what you about to say. Yeah, man.
has a top
Why?
50 rapper of all. Listen,
Why?
like, but not even why. The audacity
Yeah.
of Forbes told us this. Forbes told black people this. Forbes told black people, we don't care about y'all until y'all are billionaires.
Yeah.
They're known for the Forbes list. We don't care about a rapper at all unless he's a billionaire. We don't care about black people unless they're billionaires. And all of a sudden, y'all think y'all can have a conversation
Yeah.
on our culture? Who's the top 50 of all time?
Yeah.
Could you imagine the Source magazine being like, yo, back in the 90s, we're gonna do top 25 rock albums of all time. Rolling Stone will lose their mind.
Yeah.
Yo, Jet magazine, top 25 country albums of all time. Dog. Like, but when it comes to us, these folks think they can come and talk about us.
Yeah.
And I say this all the time, where I say hip hop is at its best when it's not seeking the approval of white
Mhm.
America.
That's true. Yeah.
People can appreciate it, people can embrace it, but when you're not searching for the approval of white America, the white press, the white public, that is when it operates at its finest. That's when we talk about the golden years in the 90s, because these people didn't think it was that important, right? But the last time I saw like a really great push in that direction, you had like 2014, 2015, you had all these really, really great black albums that were having black conversations. You had Kendrick's To Pimp a Butterfly. You had Solange, Seat at the Table. You had D'Angelo's Black Messiah. All these albums came out within the same time period, and they were just really, really great records having black conversations with
Yeah.
black folks, right? And they sold still. So it wasn't this thing where, oh, when you talk about black stuff, people aren't going to buy it. Like, no, the record still sold. But But that's the peak of our culture. We're not trying to be like, yo, we let's make sure we make a record to make them comfortable because no other genre does that.
No, none.
You know what I'm saying? Like if there's a rock act that goes on tour, they don't say, hey man, we don't have enough black people in the audience. Let's figure out a way to cater to them. So the audacity is that we let them do that.
Yeah.
Like y'all need to have no conversations about our culture when y'all have proven, especially Forbes, that y'all don't care
Yeah.
about our culture.
Yeah.
It's just silly. It's just dumb. Like
Very, very. Because when I saw the list, I was reading it and I was like, "What is?" And then after going through like when I got to like 10, then I was like, "Who wrote this list?" And then I looked and I was like, "Forbes, are you serious?"
the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Yeah, yeah. It's just silly. It's just silly. It's just silly. Listen, they just think they have the authority to talk about it. Like, no,
Yeah. Nah, you
no.
don't.
Listen,
Nah.
the authority to talk about it and not telling us who voted on this.
Yeah.
Show us the pictures.
Please.
Give them, give us their resume why they think. Give us your criteria why you think. That's all of them to do. We could never do that.
No.
Culturally, as black people, we can never do that. And it's more hilarious because we started rock, we started jazz. We can't even talk
Yeah.
about our own cultures that we started anymore,
Right.
right? We
Right.
can't write about, well, black publication write about rock albums. They gonna light us up. Black
Man.
publication,
Yeah.
jazz records, they gonna light us
Light
up.
us up. Yep.
Blues, light us up. And that's all ours, right?
Yeah.
But y'all, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It the audacity of it, man, the caucasity of it. I just think it's hilarious. So yeah, like look, man, I love Cowboy Carter. I love the Beyonce country record, but there's a part of me when the country people be like, no, we're not accepting this. Is partially racially driven, but
Yeah.
I'm also kind of like, you know what? Good for y'all. Good
Yeah.
for y'all. Even though we started country too, right? So I'm not arguing that conversation, right? But we started country too. But country people are basically like, look, hey, I ain't never seen Beyonce over
Right.
here.
Yep.
All of a sudden she gonna do a country album now. We ain't gonna do it. Like
Yeah.
they probably saying some racial stuff in that in the meantime, between time. Love
Yeah.
mulatto, that mulatto looking girl. They might be saying something crazy, right?
Right.
But but a part of me kind of like, all right,
Yeah. Me
all
too,
right.
because I'm like, they like, we hadn't seen her. She doesn't come hang with us. And I mean,
Listen,
hey.
listen, gatekeep if you want to, but we gotta do the same thing, right?
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
I was having this conversation the other day where you had one of these guys, um, was it Jack Sparrow? I can't remember. One of these like white rappers all of a sudden starts singing. He's singing Elvis at some event the other day, and I'm like, here it comes, because we start to see this where somebody like Justin Timberlake makes his whole career, his whole solo career, on two Southern black producers, Timbaland and the Neptunes, both out of Virginia. He made his career, his solo career on these black musicians,
Yeah.
leaning into black music, and then all of a sudden, yeah, I just want to do a country album, right? Somebody like Miley Cyrus, who leaned on her solo career, Hit Boy and Pharrell, all these
Yeah.
black producers to put that Bangers album out, twerking all around, buttless girl, right? Cardboard cutout, twerking all around. Make her solo career off of that. Then all of a sudden she goes and she's just like, I don't like dealing with hip hop culture anymore because it's all about pimps and hoes and people putting
Right.
and sexualize this. I'm like, yo, you was the main one doing
The
this. And
main
so
one.
so you see this thing where you will have a lot of these white artists that get into black culture that when it's convenient to embrace whiteness again, they'll go into they make their country record.
Yeah.
And so I would say the same thing. You know who's on it literally right now? Post Malone.
Yeah.
The dude's
Yeah.
performing at the CMAs. The
Yep.
dude's his first song is called Iverson.
Are you
White
serious?
Iverson. Yeah, it's his first song. White Iverson. right? Hip hop culture, leaning to now you singing at the CMAs? Like, I shoot another guy that did that, and there's a South Carolina connection. I'm not trying to throw him on the bus. They might not see this. Yellow Wolf
Yeah.
rapper out of Alabama, who worked with a Columbia, South Carolina producer. Shout out to Willpower.
Yep.
But I'll be vocal about this. Yellow Wolf made his career with this black producer, being in black music.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And then when everything happened in Columbia with Dylan Roof and the flag, this man goes on Instagram with the Confederate flag in a picture, talking about how it's not hate, it's culture, it's this. And now all of a sudden now he's wearing cowboy boots and riding motorcycles. Like, hey, never called him to task for that stuff. But it's like, dog, you started your career with 808s rapping about my box Chevy. Now all of a sudden you posting pictures with a Confederate flag, and there's a black man that was your producer from the state with Charleston 9 happened. Like, no.
Yeah.
So my thing is, we need to get kicked too.
That's one thing I find, and I when I have these conversations with people, I'm just like, man, it's like we always try to include everybody, but we had to create these spaces because we weren't included, and that's for a
Yeah.
reason. Like you got to hold on to that.
I think what happened, and I have kind of like a very, very complicated thought process with this. What happened was, if you look at the civil rights movement, and I have a newfound appreciation and love for MLK. Jonathan Ive, who wrote the Pulitzer Prize winning King biography. I had him on my podcast. Really, really great guy, and we had these deeper conversations about King. One of the things that I always noticed about the civil rights movement, there was a portion of it where it was, hey, there's this white diner that don't want to serve black people, and you got black people that go to this white diner, they sit at a table. They're like, hey, serve me. These white people are like, nah, we ain't gonna serve you. Service. No, we ain't gonna serve you. Service. We gonna bust you in the head, we gonna call the cops. They bust us in the head, they call the cops, we get arrested. And then we come back to that diner again. What that tells white America is, dang, y'all wanna be around us so bad, don't y'all? We can we can beat you over the head, arrest you, and you wanna come back to us? Wow. So even to some black folks, they think that success is proximity to whiteness,
Yeah.
right? And so you start to see, even with our arts and our cultures, that we want to be so inviting to have them around us. And also, we just so used to white people being mean to us that if they just accept us just a little bit, we're like, oh, come to the cookout. Yeah. Let me show you.
Yeah.
Let me show you how we make this chicken with 11 seasonings and spices, and then KFC steals it, right?
Right.
So there's a part of that where I feel like what should have happened is these white restaurants don't want us in there. The Garveyism idea, Garvey would have been like, all right, y'all don't want us in here? Okay, well, let's look at how many black dollars keep this place open. Take all this black money out of here. Let's go to our own restaurant. Spend money
Mhm.
in our own community, right? It's one of the reasons why I named my podcast the Negro League. It's because the Negro League wasn't just about a baseball team; it was a
Right.
black economy, right? So you had the best players, the best teams, and and you had black hotels, black restaurants, black gas stations, black diners. That all these artists, or not these artists, but all the, well, I guess they artists too, but all these players that were rotating and go to these different cities. And so what ended up happening was this, as I wear a Jackie Robinson shirt. What happened was you had MLB. They had no interest in integrating the game. They had an interest in poaching the Negro Leagues. Because what happens in any sport is that, hey, if I got a contract with a team and you try to take my player to go to your team or go to your franchise, if he's still under contract, you got to pay me.
Mhm.
You got to
Yep.
compensate me, right? What ended up happening where a lot of these businesses didn't respect the Negro Leagues, they would just take these players, snatch them out, and be like, what you gonna do about it, right? if you really wanted real integration, what should have happened was Kansas City Monarchs should have been an MLB team, right? Bring these black players to be a team to play against these white boys. See what, right? So it wasn't real integration. What it was just plucking people here and there
Yeah.
until the league kind of collapsed, right? And so that was the beauty of the Negro League was seeing this black enterprise, but the ugly part of it was seeing what happened to the league afterwards, right? And again, I can't get mad at these players because
Yeah.
success looks like the proximity to whiteness, right?
Yeah.
Success looks like, being in Major League Baseball. And then you hear these stories that these players imagine thinking getting out of the Negro leagues into this white league would be so much better. And then the way these guys are treated, like it's the most, yo, it's insane. But there's a hip hop correlation to that where it's like, you know, we want to be accepted in these spaces.
What's next for you, your art gallery? And we definitely gonna have to do this again. Because
Absolutely, man.
there's so many other things I want to talk about. But before I let you get out of here, like what's next?
I always tell people that I'm doing exactly what I want to do. I just want to get paid more money doing it. So like, there's nothing that's next. It's just basically what I'm already doing. So I tell people I'm literally an ambassador to the city, and that's special to me because
Yeah.
it forces me to be able to see the beauty in Columbia and find the beauty in Columbia, and that's not me thinking that the city is perfect, but I feel like I can talk about it because I love it, right? So I can talk about the warts and the flaws and be here to try to fix that. So what's next that's going on? The gallery's called Soul House. It's SOULHAUS. You can go to soulhouse.art on Instagram. Follow the page. And I want this space to on top of selling art, I want this space to be seen as a community outreach space. So book signings and poetry readings, and I want to do I want to do a program. I was just talking to somebody about where we get artists to get us artwork that doesn't hit past a financial threshold, so we can encourage young collectors. So if we're doing something and say,
Mm,
hey, let's get artists to give us some pieces in the I guess what we would do the event, the pieces can't go beyond $200. So we can
yeah.
get younger people to start investing in the pieces as opposed to being sticker shocked by $5,000 pieces on the wall. So I'm really intentional about getting young collectors involved. We had Ta-Nehisi Coates at the gallery in October. That was a big deal to have him speaking on his new book and just being out there for the community. And I think what's more for me is like, hey man, I'm still out here in these streets. I think like doing your podcast, one of the things that I thought was the most important thing for me to be able to do is if I'm an artist, I have to realize that my art isn't my record, my art isn't something on the wall, my art is me. And when you realize that, my paintbrush is being able to communicate. And so to be able to be on long form conversations like this, to be able to do podcasts with you, be able to do like interviews and things like that, where people can hear my story, hear my perspective, hear how I feel about things, that's going to be the best way to push things forward. Um, so yeah, so I'm gonna be out here. So anybody want me to do a pod interview? Anybody want to use the space to host an event? Anybody that needs a DJ? You know, I'm just staying busy and I'm making some new music. So I'm excited about that.
Okay, how can the people get in contact with you, support you? And yeah, Tuesday nights, that Tuesday night DJing, man.
Yeah,
Plug that.
Tuesday. So Tuesday night at Lula Drake. I'm there every Tuesday. That's my residency there. I play nothing but jazz records, and it's exciting. I love it. My favorite gig. I'm out there 6:30 every Tuesday night, 6:30 to close, 6:30 to 10 every Tuesday. If you want to support me, go. Anything. All the social media is Preach Jacobs, so you can go there. You can go to my hub of mobettersoul.com if you want to buy some merch. If you want to buy the record, you can get it from the website. I sign all the copies. Or if you want to go to Papa Jazz Record Store, we have the records in there as well. If you want to just donate to a brother, just donate to Mo Better Soul at Cash App. So,
Hey.
but nah, like just if people want to support, like showing up. And again, if you want to stream the music, that's support too. So I don't want people to think that they don't want to
Yeah,
stream anymore because it's less than a penny. I think that word of mouth is also important because next time I have a show or an event, because you streamed it and heard it, it might make you want to come out. So you
true.
want to
Yeah.
support an artist, pay for a show, pay for a concert ticket, pay for some merch, show up for the people.
There you have it, everybody. I want to thank you again for being my guest, taking the time out of your schedule, and to my listeners, remember, keep pushing forward. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Terrence P. Elmore, and this is the place where poetry meets conversation. Hit that follow button and turn on your notifications so you won't miss an episode. Check out my blog, thebrownsugarcafe.blog. Also connect with me on Instagram at thebrownsugarcafe. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, remember, keep pushing forward.